kick off recording. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. This is the Network Plumbing Working Group meeting for June 17th. And let's get it started with some of our regular business. Feel free to add your name to the attendees list on the agenda if you haven't, or if you care to. It can always be used later to declare your candidacy as a member or a maintainer. This week doesn't look like we have any regular business, which would be any new members or maintainers. And now we can head on to the rest of the agenda. The first topic is one that was carried over from last week. I was hoping that we'd have Adrian C. on the call, who added it to the agenda for the last meeting. However, we don't have him. Is there anyone on the call that would like to comment on this? It's regarding the API group that we used. All right, in that case, I think that we can move right on to Levente's topic. Yeah, Levente, thanks for joining, appreciate it.
Hello, hello, thanks for the invite. Do you want me to take over already, or?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. If you wanna just give an overview of what you provided on the agenda would be awesome.
Okay, so let's start with a little introduction / background, because yeah, I'm not a regular participant on this forum, even though some of you might know me. So I'm Levente Kale, I also known as Levovar from GitHub. I have a couple of projects mostly related to, I don't know how to call it, improving resource management in various aspects of Kubernetes. Namely, I'm authoring Denom and CPU Pooler. Besides my upstream work, I'm also a cloud / product architect inside Nokia. So I'm from Nokia. I'm working on NCS, which is short for Nokia Container Services, and it is basically our CAS platform. And why am I saying all of this stuff is because inside NCS, we do use multiple solutions when it comes to improving network management experience to our users. It means that we support multiple meta plugins, namely Denom and Mutus, and we even support them, let's say, being installed in the same cluster, just in different host groups. Now, what we are seeing from the field is that, let's say, each of the meta plugins have work a little bit differently and have a little bit of a different community to itself, and went a little bit of a different way of how to approach certain various network management aspects. And we see that it kind of creates a friction sometimes. So we have multiple CNFs inside the company and also outside of the company coming from third party. And this, let's say, disparity in supported feature set, or just the disparity in through what APIs these features are available through, it's basically a recurring topic. So I was thinking about how we could address this. And I did a POC recently, which kind of, let's say, validated my idea, because I have an idea, and I basically came here today to present this idea to you and see whether you are receptive to it or you are interested in it or not. So, just to have a discussion about what I have in mind. That's it as far as introduction goes, and feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have a question. Maybe now, if you're interested in the background a little bit more, or not, if I can just jump into the idea part.
You might as well jump into the idea. No, yeah, thanks a bunch. Yeah, by the way, it's pretty cool that you guys were able to implement network attachment definition in Denom. That's really neat. And yeah, as we can find some common ground here, like I know that we can have some synergy between the work that you've done on Denom and what we've done in the Network Plumbing Working Group. And I mean, personally, I know that there's a lot of rough edges that you've cleaned off that, you know, I've seen deficiencies with in some of my own work. So yeah, I'm very interested to see, you know, how we can find some common ground and, you know, collaborate. So yeah, that's awesome, Levente. Thanks.
Yeah, if it wasn't clear from the introduction, that's what the idea is. So some collaboration and finding the common ground between the two ecosystems. I would like to use the word ecosystem because I kind of feel like this is what we have today. So it's one thing that we have multiple meta plugins, and yeah, it's not a secret that, let's say, my idea about how meta plugins should work is different of Mutus's basic design principles. I kind of stating CNI is not really the best API for network management. Mutus glorified it. I hid it. Basically, that's the basic difference, and I don't necessarily see that changing. However, there is a lot of commonalities or similarities, I think, in the ecosystem which was created around these meta plugins. So from my perspective, our project or my project, I wouldn't say it's Nokia's project, it's really my pet project mostly. So let's not associate it with my company. So how I approach this topic is that, yeah, there is a meta plugin and that implements, let's say, some core functionalities, but there are a lot of, let's say, supporting tasks which are absolutely critical to an end-to-end automated network management experience. However, I don't feel it's the job of the CNI plugin to do these tasks. So how I built up the project is that there is a meta plugin called Denim, and it has APIs, and it does what is absolutely necessary to provide the interfaces and IPs and whatnot to the users. But all of these extra network management automation functionalities or whatever, I kind of implemented in separate operators or controllers, or how you want to call it today. What's the fancy name? I guess I should use the word operator since there are some people from Red Hat. So let's call them operators. Now the good thing in this approach that any functionality which is implemented in this way, so via an operator, while it currently only speaks the language of the Denim APIs, they are already somewhat abstracted away from these specific APIs. And the idea would be that if we would simply teach these operators to how to speak other APIs, namely network attachment definition, and whatever API definitions we are having or you are having under the network plumbing workgroup, any functionality which is implemented this way could be easily reused in other ecosystems as well. For example, if Malthus happens to be the configured meta CNI in a given cluster. And the POC I did, that was with one of these, let's say, operators or controllers. So this was the initial idea. I wanted to validate it, really in practice, how easy it is to do it in code and stuff. So I went out and I did a PR, which I also linked in the agenda to validate this concept. That PR is basically an addition to one of these controllers. I have 4, which I think there might be some reusal opportunities. So I basically took the simplest one and just checked how easy it is to teach it to talk another language. And it's like basically 200 lines of code. So really not that hard. And what I achieved with this is that I really just needed to, let's say, modify or expand the event handlers or the API handlers at the top level of the operator. And I didn't need to touch any of the underlying functionality. So the code which does some network automation tasks. And we can deep dive later. What are these tasks exactly which we could do? For now, what I'm trying to highlight is that via doing a simple API enhancement, I think it would be feasible to port some of these functionalities, again, depending on interest level, to other ecosystems as well, namely Mutus ecosystem. Now, if this is something which this community would be interested in, from our side or from my side, Gergo, please feel free to interrupt me if I'm saying something stupid which is not valid or legit from
Good
our legal
idea.
perspective.
Don't worry.
But if you don't, then from our side, if there is an interest in reusal, we would be also happy to donate said projects under MPWG GitHub space as well. So basically, this is the idea. Too long didn't read version. I have some functionality which we think does some network automation, which could be reused in Mutus ecosystems as well. If we would go ahead with this project, it might need a little bit of a modification in this project, nothing major. We can discuss how much it would be. And if it's something which we would like to go ahead with, then we could also donate these projects and work on them together. That's basically it.
All right. No. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. As a next step, Levente, would you be willing to put together just a short presentation or demo? I mean, I would be happy with whatever format you're into, just to, whatever, give some demonstration so we can get I mean, your description of course is very good, but so we could just have more of like a hands-on, so everyone can kind of see in action, whether in action is via slide deck or via terminal demo or whatever you like, and hopefully generate some more interest, and then educate people about it, and then we can put it to a vote for a project to accept as part of the network plumbing working group. And I'm more than happy to help on whatever bits and pieces to get it moved over, etc. And I guess I would also say is we've never in this group had anything other than a unanimous vote, and usually it's because people are pretty good at sharing idea or whatever, and usually people get the sense of if it's gonna fly or not after a little bit of discussion. But I personally see a lot of synergy with problems that we're trying to solve, problems you're trying to solve, and it totally fits the mission of the group, which is essentially goal number one of the group is what can we do about the multi-networking problem in Kubernetes. This is certainly 100% relevant to that. And then also to have a home base for vendor neutral projects. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd be psyched to see some of this work in action, learn it a little bit more. But yeah, that sounds good, Levente.
Okay, so how about this? In the past, I already made or have a couple of recordings, which are kind of like hands-on demos. So if you are fine with that, I think I can go ahead and share these. Now, in these demos, it's kind of a mixed bag. So in some of these demos, I present how Daemon works itself, but I also present some of these features implemented as controllers. So I need to go back and see what do I have exactly. But generally speaking, absolutely not an issue for me to put together something more concrete and hands-on. Sure.
All right. Yeah. No, that sounds awesome, and yeah, totally fair to reuse material, and especially if that makes it more efficient. And I guess a couple ways to go about that is, one, you could send some pointers to those presentations on the mailing list, and point out which sections would be relevant for the common ground type of work. And the other thing is you come back in a subsequent meeting and show them in real time too. I'm okay with whatever approach, but yeah, take your time to get some materials.
Yeah, I think we can do both. So I will first try and check what do I have and how could I share it. Besides that, or in addition to that, maybe if I have anything, you can munch on it until the next meeting, but I can, yeah, absolutely present on the next meeting too. Some of the hands-on stuff. Okay, so maybe high level, so it's or a little bit lower level, so we are talking some specifics. Functionality-wise, we have 4 operators, what I think are kind of or might be somewhat interesting to you. The problems what we have faced and I solved with these projects, well, to a lesser or more extent, are basically 4. So we face issues with automating host interface management with some kind of special networks. So whenever somebody is using IP VLAN or MAC VLAN CNIs, or basically any other CNI which includes or relies on some host interfaces already being created on the node, be them, like VLAN interfaces, VXLAN interfaces, or whatnot. So that's a recurring issue, how to automate the creation of these host interfaces on the right hosts on a basically API-driven automated manner. So we have an operator for that. I think that could be one of the interesting stuff. The second is IP management, so IPAM. Here we have a little bit of a difference because I strongly believe that IP address allocation should be an integral part of the network management API. I think your ecosystem also a little bit moved towards this idea, but still basically what you have in whereabouts, I have it integrated in Denon, but it's kind of the same. So like an API-driven centralized network or IPAM plugin. The problem with centralized API-driven IPAM plugins, I think what you are also experiencing nowadays, that Kubernetes have a lot of failure scenarios, and Kubernetes doesn't always handle those failure scenarios very well. I'm talking about network outages, be them temporary or permanent, host restarts, whatnots. And more often than not, we have seen that.
Know about that.
More often than not, we have experienced that IP is just getting lost. And if we only rely on releasing IP addresses during the CNI del operation, right on that specific node, there is basically, you can never be sure whether you need to release something or not. So what we did is we created a centralized operator, which is running on the manager nodes. So it's kind of independent a little bit from the CNI lifecycle. And it kind of oversees these dangling allocations, or like policies these dangling allocations in a centralized manner. So that's what I call cleaner. And I think that could be something interesting as well. And the last 2 operators I have, I'm fairly sure, and I know for sure that you also have some work in the area, because these are very old topics. And for these 2, maybe some kind of a merge or merging of functionalities is better than just trade donation. I don't know. We can definitely discuss it once we are through these demo sessions. One topic is extending the Kubernetes services concept to cover multiple interfaces as well. I know that we have a little bit of a different approach to this. I always thought that the service discovery aspect of the services feature is definitely something what we can extend, and I did just that. I don't really think that the routing aspect of the Kubernetes services should be universally extended, but nevertheless, that's something we can discuss later. I'm just highlighting what this operator does. But that's what it does. It's basically, you can create secondary interface-aware Kubernetes services, kinda. The 4th and last is same, but with network policies. That could be the short summary. So some kind of an operator which universally implements software-based microsegmentations, firewalling, absolutely independent of what is the underlying CNI used to create that specific interface. And that's a huge gap, which we see for a long, long time, and it's always coming back from customers. So, and I know that for the last 2, you also have some projects, although I would be lying if I say to you that I'm fully familiar with the full extent of what you have done in this space. I know that you have done something there. I also have some working solutions there. So these 2 could be aligned, in my opinion. But these 4 operators, what I have at the moment, and I think which could hold value, generic use value.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. We definitely have some overlap, and it would be cool to see where this kind of stuff could come together. And we have some forward progress on services, and also we have a project for network policy and on secondary interfaces, which is extensible, and it's covering a growing number of situations, but still, still growing. So, yeah, I'm excited to see some, the potential for overlap here, and we'll see what the what the quote unquote interactive get rebase of these ideas results in, which could be interesting. But yeah, this is really great stuff. Definitely very cool to hear about the host networking operator. That's a particularly sticky problem. That's really cool that you have some work on that as well. So.
Yeah, I also don't want to give off the vibe like, oh, we have done and solved everything which is out there. Not really. The first 3 operators, they are kind of deployed in production and used for, let's say, a long time. When it comes to the multi-interface firewalling, yeah, it's kind of the same. So that's more of an alpha version for me as well. And it implements some core level of use cases, but there are definitely challenges which I myself also haven't solved yet. So that's more on the alpha side, same as your firewalling stuff.
So may I ask some stupid question? Can I? Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask. So I'm looking at the some of the stuff like the IAM cleaner for IPAM stuff, and then I'm also feeling that the controller is pretty depends on the implementation of the IPAM. I mean that the IAM cleaner is pretty depends on the IPAM of the IAM side. So maybe if you I'm just wondering that what you are going to make it more generalized, or you just putting this stuff as the part of the network prompting working group only?
So if we are specifically talking about the cleaner, to some extent you are right, but not really. So it doesn't really depend on Denham's IPAM itself. The thing is that we kind of made it pluggable already. So we can divide it into 2.
Yeah, so
parts.
At that time, I'm just wondering that the implement, so how do I say, the pluggable one big operator or the 2 small operator for specific implementation. So so sometimes the big pluggable application, it seems to be hard to maintain. Like maybe if you're good at the new linker or the LLVM linker or the compiler, there is lots of the lessons from these stuff. So maybe if you have a time, maybe you I recommend to you to look into it anyway. So maybe that this is the design trade-off, and then also that's the a little bit concerns. So for now, and then also I'm looking at the service watch as well, and then it seems to be a little bit different from the current our prototyping from the design or the networking perspective. So
yeah, I mean that's why I brought up definitely. Let's discuss the high level speaking. High level speaking, what I had in mind is first of all, I'm not looking to remove features which are already in there. What I'm looking for is, first of all, donating and then extending, so it covers more use cases.
Yep. So, I understood. But so how do I say? So the extending the lots of stuff, then the controller needs to be looking to the various CLD, and then this makes the chaos. so this is also a trade-off. So So as far as implementing the various Kubernetes operator, the simple operator is pretty good to maintain. So and then when I be implementing the some operator, I try to how do I say? Try to reduce the Kubernetes objects to watch as I could. That's the keeping the software quality and then the less bugs and then the making the user happy and then also me happy as well. so that's my experience. So the yeah, a little bit the I'm wondering that the make it generalize, making the operator complicated, so that is acceptable or not. That is the not the how to say, just for software architecture was just a performance point of view that concern, not the community the stuff. I mean, so the yeah, I'm pretty welcome about the you bringing the these stuff, and then the of course the we I'm pretty open to discuss about that, but so that is still my concern. So
yeah, so I completely understand where you're coming from. From effort perspective, maybe what I can tell you that I'm basically a 1 or 2 man army at this point, and I'm maintaining all of these 4 operators plus the Denom core alone with one other guy, or maybe tops 3 of us. So it's not that big of an effort. When it comes to pluggability, yeah, it's true that it would mean that the CRD library code or the CRD generation code, multiple of those would be included in these projects. But the whole idea behind this concept, and this is what I set out to prove in the POC, that this is the only code part which we need to branch. And by the way, this is the code part which is generated anyway. So there isn't really much to maintain, since the CRD integration or the API integration, that's a generated code. You have the client code as well. I have the client code as well in my repo. It's absolutely generated. We just store it, for purposes.
Yeah, but also the reconciliation, the routing, we need to add this library, and then we do lots of the processing in the reconciliation, right?
Yeah,
Once
but
we add
what I'm trying to say that behind the CRD code, the functional code that need not be branched, regardless which API triggered the event. So that's how I imagine it. And if we look at it from this perspective, then we only maintain one functionality. It's just the functionality can be accessed via different APIs. That's my imagined, Brave New World scenario. But again, so let's go ahead with the show. And if later on we see that something is more complex, or you have an idea how it could be done better or more simplified, I'm totally open of reworking and refactoring and cutting up into multiple pieces. That's not an issue at all.
Yeah, and also I don't look into the code yet. I'm just looking the mentions the URL for URL about that. So yeah, maybe we should understanding for each other and then try to make the common ground for that. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
And again,
Yeah,
so if we have the review and you say that you know what, we are really not interested in, I don't know, operator 3 or 4, maybe we could use 2. Sure, it's a open buffet, let's say. I'm really not bothered if you feel that something is not possible to make common. It's just I had this idea, I brought it in here, and let's see how it goes.
Cool. I appreciate that, and of course, as we dig into the details, we'll learn more about which things merge cleanly or don't, etc. But yeah, I appreciate you coming to the group to share the ideas and the code, of course. So yeah, we can move forward on that, and we can start to hash out those details and yeah, see where where we can merge. So yeah, I appreciate that big time. And Tomo, thanks for jumping into the discussion. That's there's important considerations to make with all of this, and depending on the projects that we've had and the efforts we've had in the groups too, sometimes we need to like have some design discussions and breakout groups and documents and all of that, but we can figure out all of those details. I think that the important thing is thank you for all the links, the context, and as we move on to the next steps, we'll get into more of the details. So sweet. Any other commentary on this topic before we move on? All right, excellent. That being said, the agenda is complete for today, so it's an open floor for any other topics.
Hello guys, myself is Shant. So apologies if this meeting is not the right forum to discuss, but I have raised a pull request to change basically NAD CRD. So let me quickly share my screen. Oh, I think it is not enabled.
I can change that. Give me a second. All right, give it another try, Nishant. Thanks for joining too. And this is definitely the right meeting. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, is it visible?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, so a while back, I used a PR to basically add a status field to the network attachment definition CRD. So I got response in the PR itself that we should attend the meeting and propose. So basically here we just trying to add a status field to the network attachment definition object. So this status field actually allows to programmatically access the status information. So which is a more in a Kube API native way, and it doesn't break the functionality, and it is an optional field. So basically this status field contains two things. So state which can be success, failure, pending, and observation. Any message it can be there. So this status field actually can be used by any controller implementation, which is trying to whoever is trying to write a controller for the NAD actually. So we saw this in our use case. We saw this as a value. So I just wanted to make a proposal to that one. So yeah, any ideas about that? Like over to here.
So thank you for the proposing that this stuff. So yeah, you are right way. I mean that so currently this working group is maintained of the specification of the network attachment definition, not only the client library, also the its specification is maintained as, I mean that the different Google Doc have the network attachment definitions specification. So maybe you also need to be writing the specification is the amendment or update that stuff to proceed this stuff. So that's the great stuff. And then the to me, from the design perspective, I'm how do I say? I have a little bit the comments on that. The first is the name of the status. So the maybe this. So the as far as looking the pull request, this is so this status contains the you may have the operator for the managing the network attachment definition, and then the to reconciliate the status is putting in the status, right? So the network attachment definition is to mainly for a network. So that if you are looking at the network attachment definition status, then user may understanding the network status contains this stuff. So this means the MAC VLANs is success. I don't know what does it mean. And the IP VLAN is failure. I don't know. SRB pending. Why? Maybe even though the SRB device is ready and then the device plugin working for that. But if the controller putting the pending state, then the user is misunderstanding that, hey, we create the pod with SRB and this works fine, but why this status is pending? So maybe the I'm recommend to use the another term. That the network definition, operator status, or this stuff.
Okay.
That's the one stuff. And then also I'm still wondering that the from the Kubernetes native way, from the our working group as well as the other working groups such as the Kube, Open Kubernetes or OBS, we are using the annotation field of the CLD to adding the various information. I mean that the Malthus Malthus add the network annotation in the pod object, and then also the Kube OVN added the network information into the annotation. So that at that time, there you do not need the change in the CLD, and then you can easily adding your information as you want to. So that is the also the how do I say? So the once we changing the network definition, then we also changing the version, and then also version conversion needs to be considered to all other components which looking the network attachment definition. So that's the also the consideration. So they maybe the maybe we could consider for next version. So currently we do not have any plan yet, but of course once we get the various concept, of course we need to thinking about the next version. At that time we could introduce the various fields such as the status or other stuff. But to the before that, maybe it takes a little bit time. So I'm recommend to utilizing the annotation field for first, and then you can achieve your things you want to do. So and then for next version, there we could thinking about to introduce this concept in somehow. So that is the one idea.
Any chance you could tell how would you use this? Because I just look through the PR and basically that's not kind of obvious. You're just adding the fields, but the thing is with those states, those are cluster wide. Who would update those? And what will be the error if something's wrong? What means the network attachment is wrong? What does that mean? Because today it is used by every pod. If one pod fails, that means you update that state, which is basically not correct. Or could you explain how would you use that? I'm not sure whether you can disclose how you would plan to use this.
Yeah, so basically in our use case, we are creating some object depending on the after the creation of the MAD. So we have written a controller which basically watches the MAD creations and updation all the events, and it in the reconciliation logic we create some other objects which we need. So if those objects are like we cannot create those objects, so depending on that result, if the object could not be created, we'll just update the state like success, failure, or something like that, pending to create. So this is our basic use case actually.
And then also maybe you also could implementing the somehow in the admission controller side to prevent the error state, right?
Yeah, as a webhook, you're saying?
Yeah. So I'm just also wondering that why that you create you need to fill in the error state in the network definition. So so the our working group is also serving the network attachment definition admission controller, which is a kind of the validation web utilized to verify the CNI. So that this means the if you don't want to add the invalid CNI, at that time the user cannot add invalid CNI because the admission controller is reject. Actually, the admission controller telling the Kube API to reject the CNI at the insertion. So there may be the utilizing the admission controller, you may not requires to the status field, which is error. But but still now maybe the your error case is the your operator have the recognize something in error, but also the network that this doesn't recognize that the network attachment definition itself is in error, right?
Exactly.
Yes, basically, yeah. So it is not as such as a validation. So we wanted to create some objects depending on the creation of the network attachment definition. So if those objects we could not create in the sense, then we want to throw the error. So it is not a validation. It's kind of a after the reconciliation we would reach that scenario.
So
yeah, but I think
kinda,
this is not an actually.
yeah, go on.
Oh, okay, thanks. But I think this is not the right way to actually return an error, because the error or the status in the network attachment definition means that when you create the network attachment definition, something is happening underneath, but nothing is happening underneath, so you can actually return an error. So it's nice to return some status of when you create those objects, those extra objects that you would like to do, but I don't think that status should go inside the network attachment definition. Is not the right place to actually return that status. I mean, this is the way I see it.
Yeah, I see it the same way. Yeah, that's a good point. Exactly what, because you're trying to what you're trying to do is impose error of your object onto an ad. That's how I see it. So you have some problems with creating your own object, and you want to put error about that inside the NAT. That's not related, right? Because the state inside a network attachment definition should be about the network attachment definition. And what Tom Fu just mentioned, we have a webhook that kind of verifies it as well. So the network admission controller, which basically, because it's just a spec, right? So we need to make sure that it's correct. So there is the webhooks to do that for us. So that's why we don't have the status over there for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Nishant, one question. So I have a question. So are you suggesting to use the validation plugin for in case of any validation as part of this underneath objects, whatever we are creating as part of the NAD, right? So are you suggesting to use the webhook of the validation to make sure everything is working?
We suggest using webhook definitely to validate the NAT itself, right? If you have a problem, if you're, for example, a case where you're trying to verify that the specified string for the config is a valid JSON or is it a valid CNI, yes, the admission controller does that for you. And basically it will reject apply or creation of that object directly via Kube API. So when even if it will reject that object on a kubectl level, or if you have a Go client, and then it will, or some other Kubernetes client, it will reject at that point. So even before you even create that object. So that's what the admission controller does.
Got you. Yeah, right.
And if that's your case, if that's what you're trying to prevent from, yes, then use the admission webhook rather than doing the state.
Yeah, I don't think it's not fully, but
it's
part
not
of
that
it is
case,
correct.
actually. We were a little more than that. Hi, sorry to interrupt. This is Kishore. So basically, what we do is we create a virtual network. We use NAD to create a virtual network and associate like multiple in the second or third interface of the pod. to that virtual network. So we want a state wherein to know the status of that virtual network. Otherwise, we end up using exposing our custom CRDs of the virtual network out. So we thought NAD would be a already existing object wherein people are comfortable with and propagate the status up.
So so to me, so currently the concept of status seems to be the only for your solution. So currently the insights in the community as a hearing. So currently we do not have the status, and then this is because there maybe that the network that your requirement is not for status of network definition. So currently the Kubernetes also supporting, as I mentioned again, let me mention again. So the Kubernetes have the annotation field, which is free to use from the other components, so that you can easily add your additional fields in the annotation, and then that's the way we Maltus uses the annotation, and then the Open Kubernetes uses, and also the lots of the other Kubernetes related component utilizing the annotation field to keeping the application original information to the Kubernetes object, not only the pod, also the CRD. So the and also the in our community, the merge network policy also utilizing the annotation field to additional information. So I recommend to using the annotation field to putting your application specific information to the object.
Yeah.
The annotation to me seems intuitive because it's not governed by the specification that we maintain in this group. So if it's possible to use, I think that might be a good first step for you. And so seeing that we're starting to run a little bit lower on time, I think maybe we could start to look at some next steps here. And from my perspective, two possible next steps, they could run in parallel or serial, depending on how it goes for you. But the first one would be to take the suggestions from Tomo and Mache, which is number one, annotations, and number two, the use of the admission controller, which I think I threw a link into chat, and see if that's a possibility to use or extend or contribute to. And then secondarily, I think that to further the discussion, what we typically do when we go to modify the specification is that we take a proposal that shows which sections of the specification would be changed, and then giving the reasoning behind those. And I'm going to paste into chat, but it's also in the agenda. In case you didn't get it, let me paste a couple links into the agenda here, or into the chat. So this is the agenda. And then secondarily, this is a example spec change proposal. And if you move forward with a spec change proposal, if you're not seeing that the annotations or admission controller solves your case, maybe to communicate better with the group, you could start on a proposal. And I think that one of the first things to address is why annotations or admission controller isn't sufficient. Nishant, how does that sound? Also, thanks for your willingness to come to the group with this after the pull request. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. I think this sounds clear. So yeah, I can work on that. What the suggestions which are given by Tom on the message. Thank you all for.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
Thank you very much.
That being said, I'm happy to continue this conversation if there's more input, but we are down to 5 minutes. So any other commentary there? Otherwise, the floor is open for other topics. All right, sounds like we're talked through for today. Thanks everybody for taking the time today. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for all the collaborative conversation here. It's good stuff. We'll catch you all in 2 weeks, which will be July 1st. And we'll catch you soon. All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.